This week we've spent our week doing some upgrades, repairs and maintenance to the van. As you know, if you watched our last video, we've been waiting for a new water tank, so we were able to install that this week as well and just do some general maintenance things on the van. So come along with us and we can show you a few of the things that we did. So we've had quite a day for maintenance today. We're going to install another 50-litre freshwater tank underneath the van. So we picked up one of those from Atlas Tanks today. We've had that on order for a couple of weeks. And then we just got 4 new tyres put on, all on the rear. So we have dual tyres in the back. So we actually have 4 tyres at the back and 2 in the front. So to change all 4 back tyres was $660. So it's been a pretty expensive day for us on van maintenance, but it is what it is. We haven't paid anything for a little while now, and it's just basic upkeep of living in a van.
We noticed the other day when it was raining that the water was leaking in through this aerial in the roof, and tried to block it up at the time with butyl tape. It was coming in through that square hole in the centre, but it didn't seal it up. So I'm going to have to take the whole aerial off and seal it up properly now that it's dry. I made a bit of a mess with the butyl tape though, so hopefully it comes off okay. So I've got it all cleaned up. I'm just going to try and silicone all around the edges and probably down that channel too, because I'm not sure where it's actually leaking in, but it was dripping from just in here. Hopefully that'll do now. That's it with the nut back on, so hopefully no water gets through. We also had a leak coming through here. The carpet was getting wet, so I'm assuming that it's from this high level brake light. So I'll take that out and see, is there anywhere the water could be getting in, and if not, just seal around the outside of it. Yeah, there's a foam seal on the brake light and it's all gone. So must have been leaking in around the side there. I'll just clean all that up and silicone it, put it back on. Into there. So today I'm fitting the second water tank. We have a 50-litre Atlas tank. It's tank number 3 and it's designed to go on the passenger side, but because we have dual sliding doors we had to flip it and put it on the driver's side. Normally there's a 110-litre tank that can fit on the driver's side, but because of the sliding door you have to go with the original design, which is only 50 litres. So it's not really enough capacity for us, so I had to double up and put 2 tanks in. So I've already done this before on the driver's side, and that's the way we set it up. Just L brackets riv knotted into the chassis rail, and then 50mm strapping, and again riv knotted into the sill, and I put 5 of those. I think it might be a bit overkill because the tank only holds 50 litres, so it's only around 50 kilos. But it's slightly different on the passenger side because the fuel tank's in the way. So I'm going to have to drop the fuel tank and use probably that original strap and put another one down here somewhere. I've just seen there's already a hole in the chassis that's perfect for the riv nuts, so I'm just going to use that to save drilling anymore. And then yeah, I'll probably put 4 straps on this side. But the first thing I've had to do, which is actually, it's a mistake I made the first time, and I made it again the second time. So whenever you order a tank from Atlas, you can tell them where to put the ports, so your fill port and your outlet and your air breather. So the air breather needs to go somewhere at the top of the tank, because if you put it any lower then the water starts to flow out whenever it reaches that level. So I thought by putting it up here at the back. Then I could plumb it to go out along the chassis and up high into the arch. So it means whenever you drive, the water doesn't slosh back and spill out, you know. But the problem is, I don't know if you'll be able to see it here. So there's an original large hole in the chassis at the back here in the Sprinter, and I thought with the tank, if I put it in the top corner, then I'll be able to go straight out. But what it didn't account for, and I'll show you on the other side, is the ribs that are in here. So I had to cut out a section of the chassis so this can go through. So I've done the same on this side, and I'll show you, these ribs are what stops the tank from going up right to the floor, and for the hole to come straight out through there. So this was really thick with seam sealer, so I trimmed it back a bit just so that the tank sits slightly further up. But that's where I put the port. So I put the port at the top, at the back, but you would probably be safer putting it up here and then have an elbow coming out. So there's space to put fittings at the top because these ribs are along here. So in this part there's maybe a 50mm gap, so you can still put stuff. So yeah, just think about it if you're ordering one of these, where you want the ports to be, because I forgot and I've had to use the grinder, and yeah, it's a pain in the ass. So on our original tank, the fill port is at the rear and the air breather is at the rear, and at the front there's one outlet port and it runs into a T-piece. So the idea for this was, if we're ever plugged in somewhere that we need mains water, I could just hook it up to here, switch off the tank, and then it would feed the pump. But we've never actually used this once, so what I'm going to do is just disconnect here and use this T-piece to connect to the other tank. So whenever we fill this tank up, the water will flow along here and go into the other one and fill it too. So I'm going to have a fill port on it as well, just at the front, just in case we ever need to, if it's sitting at the wrong angle or something, that we can still fill it, but it should fill itself automatically because the two tanks are combined. And it also means it's just directly connected to the pump, so it should be a pretty easy install. So I'll connect the first tank to the second one through this hole, and then I'll just have a male hose fitting here, that if I ever need to hook a hose up to it and fill that one, I can. So there won't be an actual hose outlet to a part of the van to fill this one, but I will still be able to fill it if needs be. So the way I have the bracket set up is we've got an L bracket that goes into the chassis with this riv nut, so it means you don't need to, this compresses and squeezes, and it means you don't need to get a nut or a spanner in behind it. You can just screw the bolt directly into it, and then so that goes into the chassis, and then I have an L bracket with the 50mm strapping bracket that I used, and then it goes along the other side and it's the same thing, riv nut into the chassis, and it holds everything nice and steady. So when I fitted the first tank, I made 6 of these and used 5 just in case one ever broke on the road or anything. I would have a spare one. So I'm just going to copy this and make another 3 probably, or 4, and just use the same brackets on both sides. So that's the plan. So just put each bracket in the vise and give it a bend over this right angle. So I've got the fuel tank out now. I'm just putting these L brackets on. So That's the rivet nut. It goes into the chassis and then you can just bolt directly into it. And then I'll attach the other bracket down here to go across. I've got the fuel tank back in, all the tank brackets on, and it's just time to put the tank in there. So I gotta flush it out, because whenever they're cutting these threads, sometimes there's a bit of swarf goes inside, so I gotta flush it first. And then I'll probably remove these back two brackets because I can still access the nuts okay, whereas down below I can't get at it because the fuel tank's back in. So if I remove these and then try and slide the tank up in and go from there. So the reason the tank can't slide into place is because of this bolt. The end of it's too long, so I'm going to have to whack it off with a grinder. This one in here is okay, but yeah, that needs to have a bit trimmed off it. It's tight in here, so nowhere else to go. Bit of a tight squeeze, and I ended up taking half the nut off, but sure, it'll have to do. Success! So the threads on these two were facing in and they were rubbing off the tank, so I was able to just turn them around because I've still got access. This one is also really close, so I'm going to have to try and cut it. I think I can only get a hacksaw in there, and then this one is the one that I already cut, which is clear. So yeah, I don't want that rubbing on the tank all the time. Make a big hole in it. I had to make an extension for the hacksaw. We've had the water tanks fitted for a few days now. Both tanks are connected together, and when filling, the tanks do fill up at the same time, but it takes a while for the levels in the tanks to equalise. So they're connected together with the 12mm John Guest tubing, which is pretty small. So I think if you had thicker tubing, they might equalise a bit quicker. So I did find that whenever you're filling it, whatever side tank you're filling does fill up faster than the water can flow in between the two of them. So it will come out the air breather hose. So I have had to fit a proper fill port, not a port, but a way to fill the new tank. I was hoping to be able to just fill it up from the one side all the time, but it's not going to work like that. So whenever you're using the tanks, they kind of drain at the same rate, because it just automatically equalizes. But filling it, there's a lot of water going in a short time. So on the new tank, I've just put, I wanted to have just a male hose connection come straight out of here, but there's no space with the filler neck of the diesel tank, so I had to put a hose on it and just extend it out a little bit, and then I've just used a male to male hose fitting and block that off so nothing can crawl up there and the water doesn't leak out. And then that's the John Guest tubing that connects the two tanks. So if I ever want to just draw off that one, I can just turn this tank off, and the same if I want to fill that one and don't fill this one, I can just turn that off, or the opposite way. I've found if you do fill the tanks really slowly, the filter that we have can only filter 4 litres per minute. So if you just have it on like a trickle, the water level in both tanks will kind of fill up at the same time. But if you're just filling it normally, then one tank will fill up faster. We had another issue with the inverter. We have a 3000 watt inverter and a 2000 watt induction cooktop, and sometimes we'll cook with that while also using a rice cooker. Now the rice cooker is 500 watts, that is 2000, but you can go from 200 right up. So we normally cook in around 800 to 1000 watts. So when using that and the rice cooker, it should be in around, say, 1500 watts. The inverter's rated at 3000, so I had it running through one of these 300 amp auto circuit breakers, but to buy one of these is like 50 bucks or so. I got these online for 11 or 12 or something. I think one was from eBay and one was from Temu, but they're constantly blowing in around maybe 130 amps of load, so I wasn't sure if it was faulty or what the deal was. So replaced one, bought another one, still had the same issue, just constantly tripping at not full load. So I ended up just changing it for a 300 amp mega fuse, which is one of the bolt-in ones, and I've tested it since, and yeah, it seems to work okay now. So don't buy cheap shit. I do have a few more of these actually. One of them is running the fuse block, and the other one is running the air compressor, and then I've got another one that runs the hot water system and water pump. The one running the compressor and the fuse block I've never had any issues with, but there's a few times where the hot water system has tripped as well, and it's whenever it's on, it only draws 25 amps and there's a 50 amp breaker on it, so it's probably a case of the same thing, cheap breaker, but I just haven't replaced that yet. So
we've finally finished a week of maintenance, upgrades and repairs that we needed to do to our van. So we're going to finally head out of here and head up to Bunya Mountains today.